All right, fact checkers, it is a brand new year, but we've got the same great coffee sponsor. So if you head over to Fox and Sons Coffee and use the promo code FCT for fact check this, you get 15% off any order of $25 or more. Also, be sure to check out the new blends that Steve's got over there. We've got the Den Blend 2 Electric Boogaloo. This is a medium roast coffee. If the dark roast was a little too robust for you, but the light was not quite getting what you needed, check out the medium roast. It is fantastic. And also, they've got a brand new one. It's the Costa Rica Honey Prep. Now, this is the same great coffee, but with a little bit of a floral aroma. You're going to really want to check this one out. So head over to Fox and Sons Coffee and use the promo code FCT at checkout to get that 15% off any order over $25. Let's get started. This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast. All right, Fact Check This podcast, and today I am going to look at a brilliant troll and the real article that spawned it. So at this point, everybody has seen, or at least you should have seen, the article. They knew. Why didn't the unvaccinated do more to warn us? And a lot of people are even taking it seriously, which is probably more of a condemnation on just society in general than anything, or the very shitty nature of reporting and journalism in our current society. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this. And I would like to pull it up first and let you get a good look. See, this is it. This is the one that everybody's seen. There's the graphic. They knew. Why didn't the unvaccinated do more to warn us? Let me just flip right over here for just a second. And originally, the original post actually fit the exact same format. It was, maybe it's the mobile version. If you click on, because I'm doing this on my computer. Like when I looked at it originally, I guess it was on the mobile version. The mobile version, they're perfectly identical. Like, aside from, this is the real article. It's from The Conversation. It says, COVID, unvaccinated people may be seen as free riders and face discrimination. So this is the real article. And they knew. Why didn't the unvaccinated do more to warn us? Is the fake one. But we're actually going to go through both of them because they are kind of funny. And I wanted to start with the fake one. It's from this IQFY. And so I'm just going to click over here to their homepage to look at this for just a second. Hey, white folks, here's why you need to pay people of color for the emotional labor of dealing with you. The world's oldest jokes reveal we've always laughed at the same things. Drag queen pastors are here and they're saving the church. Your child, a far-right extremist? 11 early radicalization signs. 9 weird butt beauty products you can actually buy. So it's an impressive site. Some of it's pretty funny. Some of it is actually legitimate stuff. They're not entirely satire. They have commenting turned off on most of their posts because they seem to have managed to piss off all the right people on both sides of picking at these things. So it's kind of funny. But anyway, we're going to go back to the original article and we're going to read through it just briefly because why the hell not? They knew. Why didn't the unvaccinated do more to warn us? The unvaccinated knew what we didn't. Some of them said too little. Most said nothing at all. A lot of blood is now on their hands. This is how you can tell it's satire, because nobody in the woke COVID cult would ever admit to any of this shit. Not going to happen. Let's continue because it's relatively short. As the world struggles to come to terms with the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, one question that continues to surface is why the unvaccinated didn't do more to warn us about the potential dangers of being injected. While well-intending citizens lined up, did the right thing, and received their COVID-19 vaccinations, now seeming to do more harm than good, their unvaccinated friends stood by and let them do it. Some of them said too little. Some said nothing at all, even though they knew what we didn't. Our blood is now on their hands. Those are strong words, but the unvaccinated had access to important information about the potential side effects of vaccines. They knew about the risks of severe allergic reactions, blood clots, and other serious health complications. They knew the vaccines did not immunize us. They knew it wasn't effective and that they can cause more harm than good. They knew all of that, but instead of warning us, the unvaccinated chose to remain silent. They chose to look the other way and not speak about the potential dangers of vaccines. They let millions of good folks who did the right thing at the time fall to death and disease. And many anti-vaxxers even gloated online about how their coin flip had been the right bet. The more diabolical even urged folks they disagree with to get boosted. It has become all too clear the silence of the unvaccinated was a dangerous, sociopathic, and irresponsible decision that has had serious consequences for those of us who received the vaccinations. And silence is, after all, consent. It is time for the unvaccinated to take responsibility for their actions and to work with the rest of us to find a solution to this crisis. We cannot afford to let their selfishness and lack of action continue to harm our communities. It is time for the unvaccinated to step up and do the right thing. The unvaccinated should, by any moral measuring stick, have done more to warn about the potential risks, to help us make informed decisions about our health. And they must now ask us for our forgiveness. And hand to heart, we may just give it to them because we're good people. We took those injections because it was the right thing to do until it wasn't. Oh, damn. I gotta tell you, this is like one of the most beautifully written things I think I've ever seen. And if you didn't pick up on the satire, I don't know. One of the most disappointing things in the world that I've run across is people's lack of a sense of humor. And this is fucking hilarious. Absolutely. Well, let's go read the actual article, the one that this was kind of that the graphic was kind of stolen from, and the actual real reporting that they did on this, whatever. This is actually not a terrible article. Makes a little bit of sense. But anyway, we'll get through it. COVID. Unvaccinated people may be seen as free riders and face discrimination. More than 5 billion people globally have now been vaccinated against COVID-19. Of course, many of the 3 billion or so who haven't may not yet have been able to access a COVID vaccine, particularly in low-income countries. I don't think they're having a whole lot of issue with that, but color me skeptical. But a portion of those who are unvaccinated have chosen not to get a shot. Since COVID vaccines became available 2 years ago, we've seen increasingly wide and often bitter divergence between those who are vaccinated and those who have chosen not to be. A recent study in Nature sought to investigate the extent of the intolerance and discrimination between people who are vaccinated and people who are unvaccinated against COVID. And this is where it gets really interesting. The researchers found that in most countries, people who are vaccinated display negative attitudes towards people who are not vaccinated. But interestingly, there was minimal evidence for the reverse. The authors carried out 3 conjoint studies surveying more than 15,000 people from 21 countries across all inhabited continents. They used surveys designed to measure prejudice expressed in 3 forms: affective, for example, negative emotions towards a group; cognitive, for example, negative stereotypes; and attitudinal, for example, support for exclusion and removal of rights. The surveys highlighted that vaccinated people expressed discriminatory attitudes towards unvaccinated people in all countries except Hungary and Romania. So if you're Hungarian or Romanian, there's a chance that your vaccinated neighbors are not feeling discriminatory against you if you're unvaccinated. Conversely, antipathy from unvaccinated people towards vaccinated people was only observed in Germany and the US. Probably because of amnesty articles and stuff like that in the US. I'm not sure what's been going on in Germany. I would suspect similar. In most countries, prejudice towards unvaccinated people was as high or higher than towards social groups who have traditionally been discriminated against, such as immigrants, ex convicts, and drug addicts. We are now the discriminated against minority. The researchers found that many vaccinated people would not want their close relatives to marry someone who was not vaccinated, an example of effective expression. They also tended to perceive the unvaccinated as incompetent or less intelligent. It seems like there's a certain demographic that gets labeled in a similar way. Not saying that our the discrimination is the same, just saying there's some parallels. If you're not watching the video, you can't see me grinning my ass off during this whole thing. A survey conducted only in the US as part of the wider study found that people who are vaccinated believe unvaccinated people should be denied certain fundamental rights. And this is an example of attitudinal expression. For instance, some vaccinated people felt that unvaccinated people should face restrictions to their freedom of movement. A lower proportion advocated for restrictions to freedom of speech, access to US citizenship, and welfare benefits. And see, that's a large part of the antipathy from unvaccinated people towards the vaccinated people in the US is that we have seen such extreme discrimination and hatred aimed in our direction. And we're not one of those soft countries of people who are super forgive and forgetty or more fuck you, come get some. So that's where some of the antipathy and the hostility might come from. Just an idea. So let's see. Interestingly, the extent of discriminatory attitudes towards unvaccinated people was greater in countries with higher social trust and stronger culture of cooperation. In such countries, people were more likely to agree with the statement, most people can be trusted, as opposed to countries with low social trust where the majority felt you need to be very careful in dealing with people. The authors of the study interpret this finding through the lens of psychology of human cooperation. That is, in countries with a pronounced sense of civic duty and individual responsibility towards the common good, people who benefit from the collective effort without contributing their part are perceived as free riders. In this context, the shared effort is of course getting vaccinated, and the collective benefits include a lower risk of infection and therefore illness and death, the end of lockdowns, and so on and so forth, and blah, blah. Countries with higher trust and cooperative culture are typically more effective at suppressing epidemics. So it's understandable and indeed natural that citizens in these countries in particular would harbor negative feelings towards these so-called free riders whose choice to refuse vaccinations may endanger their peers and society at large. Although this study found greater evidence that vaccinated people discriminated against those who aren't vaccinated, rather than the reverse, there are still vocal parts of the unvaccinated population that expressed hostility towards those who are vaccinated. This is where it gets fun. For example, some claim biological supremacy over the vaccinated, calling themselves purebloods. The unfounded idea that vaccinated people are biologically inferior has gained increasing popularity amongst hardline vaccine skeptics and conspiracy theorists, to the point where some patients refuse transfusions with blood tainted by the vaccines. Pure blood all the way, baby. Come get you some of that unvaxxed sperm. Actually, I'm vasectomized, so mine's just nut juice, and there's nothing to it. But there are people out there who I'm sure will find a market for that. Unvaxxed blood. Also, I don't like needles, so you're not getting any of it. But hey, I mean, gosh, I really worked my way out of a really lucrative future a long time ago. If I had more wherewithal to think maybe one of these days they're going to try to stick some shit in our arms and fuck with us, and not doing that might actually be a potential moneymaker out of made some different life decisions. That's a lie. I absolutely would not have. I got 2 kids, and I didn't want that many, and I definitely didn't want any more. The choices that I made were definitely the right ones for me, but Here we are. These are extreme and thankfully relatively rare forms of vaccine hesitancy, but such examples show it is not just the vaccinated perpetuating negative attitudes towards a polarized society. While social psychology offers an explanation for why vaccinated people may harbor resentment towards unvaccinated people, it's important to remember that blanket discrimination directed at any social group is detrimental, not just towards those being discriminated against, but for society at large. The authors of the study warn that in the short term, prejudice towards the unvaccinated may complicate the management of the pandemic. For example, by alienating part of the population and making them even less likely to comply with preventative measures. In the long run, they suggest it may mean societies leave the pandemic more polarized than they entered it. No shit, right? Kind of seeing that play itself out. Yeah. Um, the more you scream and harp at us that we're trying to kill grandma and we don't care about anybody and blah 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 and all this bullshit while we're watching things happen around us and feeling pretty justified in our uh, decision making. You, the only thing that they're accomplishing by that is ensuring that whatever the next thing is, we ain't gonna go along with that either. Doesn't fucking matter. It could be a return of smallpox or polio. Not gonna happen. Ain't gonna do it. I'll take my chances of dying before I do anything you say, before I comply with any of your bullshit. The more they push and the more rabid they become in their discriminatory behavior towards unvaccinated people, the more they radicalize those people. They don't get that though. Like you can't explain that to somebody. They just don't. They don't. It's not that they don't understand. That they don't want to understand. If you flipped that and explained it as, if you, instead of it being vaccinated and unvaccinated, it was white people and black people, or straight people and gay people, or whatever, they would be 100% on board and they would agree that you're right. That you're going to be more polarizing by behaving and acting in this way and by treating stuff this way. But if you tell them you keep treating unvaccinated people like shit, they're going to hate you and not listen to you ever again. Like, what if you just do the right thing? Then we wouldn't have to hate you so much. Yeah, go fuck yourself. While anti-vaxxers and conspiracy sorry. Sorry, it's hard for me to read those two words back to back without laughing. Because drop out of this. Because that's the thing, right? Is we're not anti-vaxxers. We had serious questions about a particular thing and nobody had good answers. And so we're like, yeah, don't think that's gonna be a good idea. Not gonna do it. And then other things happen. It's like, yeah, glad I didn't do that. Conspiracy theorists. Oh boy. How many of these things have we been calling? I mean, there were people out on the front end of 2021, like early on, looking at what was going on and saying, hey, um, there's a lot of data that actually is out there on these things. And some of that data points to heart problems and cardiovascular problems and other things. And this could be a concern. And then here we are 2 years later. And it's pretty fucking concerning, right? And I'm not saying that the things are connected, YouTube, you fuckers. Just saying, really coincidental is what it is. But like, and I'm going to continue through the article because there's a lot more in this that like the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theorists are frequently the ones who attract the most controversy, but they're not the only people who make up the unvaccinated population. For example, a person may refuse to, or delay vaccination due to medical conditions, mental health issues, or needle phobia, or because they're part of a minority with negative past experiences with health authorities, or because they literally cannot get it because they have something that, like, if they got it, it would be, they already know that it would be detrimental to them, even if it were legitimately safe and effective. There are people who can't get it. The vaccinated don't care. They like they take bigotry to a whole new level, right? So this study reinforces how important it is for governments and healthcare workers to communicate public health information in a transparent and non-judgmental way. It's essential to understand the diverse reasons why people might hesitate about vaccinations and to communicate the importance of preventative measures for the individual and wider society without discriminating or antagonizing hesitant people or groups. And let me just say, honestly, for my own, stance on this whole thing, I would like for y'all to be as discriminatory, judgmental, miserable fucking cunts as you possibly can be, because it will just serve the purpose not only to help or to push the people who stood up against this stuff to double down on those positions and to be more to stand more firmly on those positions. But there are also a lot of people in kind of middle ground that legitimately did it for the right reasons, kind of like the 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 joke article talked about. Like they did it for the right reasons, and now they're kind of feeling like um, they shouldn't have done that, or they're having some buyer's remorse. They're kind of looking at the other side of the aisle and saying, "Man, what did why didn't we listen to them?" It's they're not actually saying like y'all weren't telling us. They the 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 legitimate vaccinated bigots who discriminate against the anti-vax, they are on the complete opposite end of that. They not only are they not saying you didn't tell anybody, they're saying you need to stop telling people. We need to have you silenced for telling people. But they're the ones who are experiencing some hesitancy going forward with things, who have started to lose faith in some of the medical procedures that we do, and in some of what is entailed in modern medicine, starting to lose faith in the FDA and the CDC, and even just their local doctors. Like there are people who are kind of in the middle of the pack, as with every argument. You have the extreme to this side, and you have the extreme to the other side, and then you have a big group in the middle that kind of falls somewhere on a spectrum of how this whole thing played out. And there are a lot of people who are like clumped together right in the middle that are looking at the way this side is behaving, and they're looking at the evidence and the things that this side had been saying, and they're starting to be like, yeah, these people are batshit fucking crazy, and these people like kind of got it all right. Maybe next time around, because there will be a next time around. Like this isn't a one off. They've been trying for 20 years. Swine flu, bird flu, Zika. Uh, I can't remember all the other ones. It's like about every 4 years or so, they tried to kick one of these things off, and they never took because they never had transmissibility. They all had high death rates, but that's something we talked about early on in the whole COVID thing, was something that has a really high transmissibility is going to ultimately have a really low death rate, because otherwise what it does is it burns out its population. Like you can actually quarantine people if something has a really high death rate, and then the people who have it all die fairly quickly, and then if nobody else is getting exposed, it just ends. Easy to mitigate, easy to manage. As was obviously the case with every other time they've tried it, or the things that they tried just didn't didn't work at all. Like they just weren't enough to be scary. But like going forward, this isn't going to be the last time something like this happens. Pandemics and or just like climate change is going to be the next pandemic. Like that's going to be the next thing that they're trying to use lockdowns and probably some sort of a vaccine for. Like you have to do this to help reduce your carbon output or whatever. I don't know. Your personal emissions make you fart less. I'm not sure how they'll do it, but they'll use some sort of an example to create another situation where all of this stuff needs to be done again. And the people who are kind of sitting in the middle be sitting there looking at the way this whole thing is played out, and they're going to go, man, these people are psychopaths and these people seem to kind of figure it out. Maybe I'll go that direction. I want them to be as radical and outrageous and do all of the things. Don't be nice to us. Keep being assholes because it pushes that middle more in our direction. Where the next time this happens, there's going to be a lot lower compliance. And that's the only way that you get through this unscathed is just don't fucking comply. That'll do it for today's episode. Be sure to tune back in on Monday, where I'll run the replay of last night's live stream with Trey, where we talked about some of the woke, dumb bullshit that's happening in the gaming world. And be sure to tune in for all the daily content. Check me out on Peddling Fiction and the morning after as well. And and go read my Substack. Lots of places that you can find me. If you like the stuff that I do, there's no reason you shouldn't be completely sated on all of it at all times. In the meantime, go check out our sponsors as well and have a good rest of your week. Later. We've got a brand new sponsor for 2023, and I am really excited to partner with Agorist Acres. Now, agoristacres.com, you can find over 100 varieties of seeds. They've got vegetables, flowers, all kinds of stuff. They've got heritage brands, everything that you want to start any kind of garden that you need. It's free shipping on any order of $20 or more. They've got cool packaging, and most of the seeds come in a fancy glass vial, no paper envelopes. They accept US dollars and crypto and can easily take either at checkout. Now be sure to head over to agoristacres.com, and anything that you get, use the promo code FCT at checkout for 10% off your order. I say all the time that you need to be starting your own garden, you need to be growing your own food, you need to be getting off the grid and becoming less dependent on grocery stores and stuff like that. Agorist Acres is a great first start. They have got everything you need for whatever kind of garden you want. Great people, great product, highly recommend. So go check them out.